of the Democracy Day. From May the 12th of June, today Nigeria holds the second Democracy Day. The day marked the annulment of June 12 presidential election, which was held in 1993, an election that was considered a watershed in the annals of Nigeria's democracy. Hence, this development was necessitated by a federal government's belief that June 12 is more appropriate to mark Democracy Day than the events of May 29. This year's celebration coincides with 21 years of uninterrupted democracy in the country. So how has Nigeria fared in strengthening democratic ideals in the last 21 years? How are democratic institutions responding to the dynamics of politics and political gladiators? How should we deepen our democratic principles, and to what extent has the role of the opposition helped in developing the nation's democracy? These are some of the issues we will try to thrash out as we assemble experts to x-ray our democratic journey in the last 21 years on our special broadcast on Democracy Day, leveraging on our diversity to strengthen democracy in Nigeria. This broadcast will feature discourse and special reports on our political development, as well as transmission of some live events to mark the day, one of which is the renaming of the National Stadium Abuja after MK Abiola. I'm Fisa Ogunfi saying, good to have you join us on our special broadcast on Democracy Day 2020. And joining me in the studio is Professor Nuhu Yakub, a former Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja and Sokoto State University. Prof, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Incidentally, we are both wearing white, and I didn't tell you this.
Well, I think it also shows, symbolically, the oneness of Nigerians.
All right, of course, Professor Yakub is a professor of political science. And from Kano, we are being joined by Professor Habu Mohammed, Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano, former Deputy Director, Aminu Kano Center for Democracy Research and Training, Mambaya House, and former Head of Department, Political Science Department, with specialty in political economy. Good to have you join us today.
For having me.
Thank you very much. And also joining us this time from our Lagos studio is Alhaji Jamiu Abiola, son of Kudirat and Moshood Abiola. He is also the Shetima Rashid of Borno, if I got that correct. He will also be part of it today. Good morning, Alhaji.
Good morning.
The program with the report on Democracy Day nationwide broadcast as put together by our State House correspondent Adamu Sambo.
It is 1 year now that President Muhammadu Buhari at the Made in June 12 Democracy Day promised to frontally address the nation's daunting challenges, especially insecurity, the economy and corruption. On this day of another celebration of democracy in the country, the president is here giving account of those promises he made.
We have recorded notable achievements in the course of implementing our 9 priority objectives. Government has continued to implement accountability and transparent policies through the Open Government Partnership and the Transparency Portal on financial transactions. Similarly, we have strengthened auditing and accountability mechanisms so as to ensure that rules and regulations are followed strictly. Anti-corruption agencies have secured more than 1,400 convictions and also recovered funds in excess of 800 billion naira. These monies are being plowed into development and infrastructure projects.
We are establishing a solid foundation for future success, the president says, stressing that the objectives of his administration have remained to stabilize the microeconomy, achieve agricultural and food security, ensure energy sufficiency in power and petroleum products, and develop infrastructure, as well as fight corruption and improve governance.
Our efforts on growing non-oil exports have started to yield some results. For instance, In the first year, our revenue from cocoa and sesame seed increased by 79.4 million United States dollars and 153 million United States dollars.
The president is elated that work has commenced on his directive on the employment of 774,000 Nigerian youths. As the president explains, these youths will be engaged in special public works program aimed at cushioning the effect of economic downturn. On COVID-19 pandemic, President Buhari says he is confident that the steps being taken by the presidential task force would result in flattening the curve, while imploring investors, researchers and scientists to come up with solutions to cure COVID-19. The president says government is determined to turn the challenge to motivation by building a nationwide public health care system that will take care of present and any future outbreak.
Humanity and indeed democracy is under the threat of COVID-19. Nigeria has survived many crises before and came out stronger. I am confident that by God's grace, we shall overcome this one and emerge stronger and more purposeful.
The president also dedicates most part of his broadcast to the nation's National Assembly for their cooperation, the youth population, women and people living with disabilities, as well as the media, and not forgetting the military and other security agencies.
I salute your courage, enterprise, and resilience, as well as your contributions to national development.
President Muhammadu Buhari promises to uphold the Constitution and protect the lives and property of all Nigerians, stressing that his administration would focus on ensuring that the rule of law prevails. In the State House, Jide Onifade, NJ News.
Thank you, Jide. That was actually Jide Onifade giving us highlights of the presidential broadcast, which was, of course, live on the network service earlier today at 7 a.m. Let's start with Prof. Your comments on the president's broadcast.
Well, from the little I was able to listen to, because I had some technical problems in the house before coming, I do sincerely think that, we have made some progress, even though the progress is very faithful. Sometimes, it's been threatened by even those who are supposed to actually operate the democratic system. And in particular, I'm, really worried about the fact that the structures of democracy, for instance, political parties, are not even allowed to, function effectively. That's one. And then even the incumbents or the individuals who actually, carry out democratic activities, like the governors, the ministers and the rest of them, or the commissioners in the states, you also discover that, not much freedom or leeway is given to them to actually carry out their activities. There is so much concentration of power, except maybe at the federal level where, the president has not been seen to be too intrusive. But you discover that in most states, everything is centralized in the governor. And to that extent, one is worried about what is it that we have achieved in the course of, in the journey, to a democratic setup in this country. But for the speech today, the president was able to actually review some of the achievements, especially at the federal level, like infrastructural development, the issue of emphasis or shifting emphasis from oil, reliance on oil, and now, relying on agriculture diversification, which is, one of the cardinal, points about, the administration. I think also, we have to look, and give a kudos to
If I take it from the points you've made, in view of, what you've seen, in the past few years, especially in the Fourth Republic, is it as if we are beginning to forget the struggle that brought us to this point?
Well, I think, let us just also admit that the long span of military rule in this country has actually derailed the cultivation of democratic culture. And this is what, because democracy is not, we should not, be deceived. It's not inborn. It has to be cultivated. It has to be, developed. And to develop it, you really have to also, respect the principles behind democratic politics. In other words, individuals, even voters, are supposed to be given the freedom to choose who exactly they want, to lead them. But you discover that so far, we are having problems about even the integrity of the elections that bring in the incumbents to office. So we have problems, and that's why I used the word initially, fitful. We have made some progress, but it is very fitful. And, there's a need to actually now begin to say, okay, for the past 21 years, there has not been military intervention or, a disjuncture in an attempt to practice democracy. But again, is it not up to time now? Because if you give birth to a child and it's already 21, it's an adult. Okay.
Can vote.
Eh?
And can vote.
And can vote. That's right. So, but of course, the political process is more complex in the sense that there are certain, even the advanced countries. For instance, if you look at what is happening in the U.S. now, how do you describe that? And this is a country that has, for over 200 years, been independent and has been practicing, democratic politics. So, it is something that we need to begin to look at. How do we how do we begin to conduct this democratic politics in such a manner that we can be consolidating on achievements we make from one election to another?
All right, let's quickly go to Kano. Professor Habu, have you been listening to what Prof has been saying here? Can you add something to it, especially perhaps from some empirical studies that you've done on Nigeria's democracy? Are we maturing? Are we leveraging on our diversity and also our processes to strengthen governance?
Well, let me begin by saying that democracy is actually a long journey, not only from the context and experience of developing democracy like Nigeria, but in any other part of the world, as Professor Nuhu Yakub mentioned. But quite really, we need to really work hard to ensure that we cultivate the culture of democratic practices in this country, as well as provide the necessary avenue for the institutionalization of the values of democracy. Right now, if you look at it from the context of institutional development of our democratic institutions, you will find out that we still have so many epileptic developments, be it judiciary, be it the executive, and of course, be it, if you like, the police, the security and other security personnel in the country. You will find out that there is the need to actually cultivate the culture of civic responsibilities, whereby Nigerians will be able to understand the kind of relationship that exists between the institutions of democracy on the one hand, and on the other hand, the democratic practices themselves. So in this regard, I can say that we have a long way to go, but that does not mean that we are really not heading towards anywhere. We are really coming up, and we are actually up and doing, only that there is the problem, daunting task of actually ensuring that we entrenched the culture of democratic values within our institutions. The judiciary should have to be independent so that it can work in tandem with the democratic tenets. The legislature has to be more or less very active in checkmating the excesses of the executive, particularly in various states in the Nigerian Federation, as pointed out by Professor. So I think there are some gaps and there are some ways of improvement, and there are some fortunes actually that one can actually say within a long period of time or within a short period of time, as the case may be, we are going to overcome some of our challenges.
Prof, we'll go to Lagos briefly. Of course, Alhaji Jami Abiola is the son of Kudirat and the late Kudirat and MK Abiola. What does this evoke for you a day like this? Poignant feelings of 93, perhaps hopes dashed, perhaps what might have been, and then looking at the current precinct of our democratic space. What are your comments, opening comments at this time?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I mean, today is a very emotional day, and of course, I mean, it's also a day that I feel a lot of relief. Democracy is a principle, but the principle without any substance is nothing. So what we want at this point is to see democracy being the principle and also having a component that is live and direct and that touches the life of people. So aside from the fact that this government has honored Democracy Day, we're actually happy to see that some of the things that my father wanted to do exactly 25, 26 years ago is what is being done right now. We have a system in place that is touching the lives of people because, as I said, without that direct impact, there is actually no point in actually even saying we want to be democratic, because it's a government elected by the people and it's a government that is supposed to serve the people in terms of a direct impact. And as we see, we've seen the results. If you look at the Ministry of Housing, Works and Housing, the fact that they've come up with this public-private partnership and they're providing houses for low and middle income families is a very, very big development. They're even providing loans for renovations. And of course, we look at the fact that the government is not just focusing on oil. They're looking at other areas of revenue, looking at cocoa, looking at sesame seeds, which is what the president said earlier, that the earnings have actually increased. That is what democracy is about. It's about giving people a new life, as in a practical, something that they can see, they can point at, and not just a question of like, oh, we're democratic, and what do we have to show for it, which was what was happening in the last couple of decades after the June 12th annulment and after the military and successive democratic government. So it's a great relief, not just symbolically, but actually substantially. We feel it, we know it. And it's also a relief from a very, very different angle as well, because this democracy came at a cost, and some people paid a direct and others paid an indirect cost. The country as a whole paid a cost, but some of us, we paid more of a cost than other people, and we lost parents, we lost lives, and but we've done very well in terms of keeping the flag flying. But at the same time, when we now see that government has recognized it, and government is even doing what the whole purpose was in terms of making things better for people, I think it's a very, very wonderful development, and I'm very, very glad that this day has come and we are seeing the results. And also, one other thing I want to mention is that we in Africa, we are not very good at keeping our history, and that is why it's very difficult for us to make progress. The Chinese wrote their histories for over 2,000 years, but we always want to forget the past. And if you forget the past, you don't learn from it. So we have to get into the habit of documenting our facts, and so that we can learn and point out. And it's in this vein that I wrote this book, The President Who Never Ruled, about my father, for the new generation, the young ones that are still were not born at that time, so that they can look at it, know what really happened, know the whole history of how a man started from nothing and how he could end up becoming one of the wealthiest people that did not just give his wealth away, but gave his life away. That's the essence of June 12th, for you to see and learn and do the same thing in your own capacity. You don't have to be as rich as Chief MK Abiola, but in your own capacity, you can do what he did. And I think these are the lessons we should learn from people like my dad, people like my mom, and people like the current president, who, despite his different positions all over in Nigeria, has done a good job in keeping to the fact that a human being is not about what you take, but what you give. Thank you.
Our comments this morning. Let me come back to Prof right here in the studio. is looked at it from the perspective, one, of family, and then, of course, the struggle and what we are seeing right now of today's players. In terms of ideologies, in the past we used to have, sharp differences, and then you could identify parties via their modus operandi, their ideologies. Are we having those sharp or tangential differences in terms of policy, in terms of outlook at this time, or is this just a matter of let's get there first?
Thank you very much. Before I answer the question, let me also add that I have emotional attachment to June 12. Because the National Caretaker Committee that brought in late Chief M.K.O. Abiola, I was the National Secretary of the SDP in the interim committee that was set up by the government after, the cabinet of King Ibe and others were, flushed out. So, I must commend the initiative of the government, of the president, to actually assign the Democracy Day to this particular historic event that took place, some 28 or so years ago.
Do you have a personal story of that era?
I was the National Secretary of the SDP, Caretaker Committee. So we work with, Air Vice Marshal Isha Shekari, who was our chairman. And then other members of the committee. We came to Abuja here at Sheraton, where M.K. Abiola was eventually elected as the flag bearer of the SDP. So I have also an
So let's jump back to the issue of ideology.
Yes.
Of course, before the SDP-NRC two-party arrangement, there are some parties that were collapsed into NRC Liberal Convention and all that, and then SDP as well.
Yeah.
Now, in this dispensation, the Fourth Republic, are you seeing those differences in terms of concepts, in terms of, outlook to governance in the parties we're seeing today?
No, we don't. We're not seeing them because, it's very easy these days to see, one individual hopping from one political party to another, and from that one to another. I mean, it's, the process doesn't actually, is infinite. There is no, we can't compare the ideological postures or posturings of the political parties today with what we had during the First Republic. If we are talking of, strictly speaking, parties that, try to come up with certain principles and they stuck to these principles. For instance, if you look at the political activities of NEPU, Northern Elements Progressive Union, it was difficult for anybody to simply just, as a member, opt out of the party, to go and join, because they will be thinking, are we having the same ideological posturing or, perception of politics? That is what is lacking at the moment. Anybody can just, and you can see what happened when in 2015 the current regime, APC, came to power. You saw the number of people who were decamping from the PDP. Even people who held very responsible national positions coming to join the APC. So you ask the question, what are they coming from a PDP to go and do in APC? In APC. There's no such. It's just a question of maybe they were looking for comfort zones where they could now settle and see to what extent they could also be made meaningful or relevant to the new dispensation. So I think that, if you are talking, and maybe, if you are talking about ideological politics in Nigeria at the moment, forget it, we don't have it. And I'm also thinking that we don't have it because, globally speaking, everybody thinks that, it is liberal democracy that is the political, the right political direction to go to. And therefore, if you come up with, there are still some parties here in Nigeria that are saying they want, a left of the center, kind of program. If they, but these are small parties, and in politics, your ideas or your programs can only be relevant if you are able to win the heart of the people by getting elected, through the elections. So if you don't have that, and you are a small party, the likelihood is that your relevance is going to be discounted. It's not going to be felt. But for the major political parties like APC, PDP, and so on, you cannot actually, for me, I do not see any, strictly speaking, any serious or distinctive ideological differences between the two.
Professor Habu Mohammed, you listen to Prof here. Nigeria's democracy, 21 years, especially I'm talking about the Fourth Republic, in terms of party ideology, is there any sharp difference that you can readily identify?
Well, political parties in Nigeria from at least 1979 to 1999 down to the present time can be regarded as parties that have common structure, parties that have common outlook, parties that have similar historical conjectures. But in terms of ideology, in fact, they are all bereft of real ideology that we know. One thing that I want you to understand is that, of course, the political parties in the First Republic were somehow castigated as ethnic, tribal, regional in nature. But if you look at it squarely at that time, you will find out that regardless of idiosyncrasies of the political parties, they were able to nurture to a greater extent some form of political inclination that could really be said to have a quite different, diametrically opposed to what we are having today. What we are having today is actually a kind of party system that actually warrants any group to come and register, provided that the group meets the INEC regulations. But looking at it from the context of foundation, you will find out that the parties do not have grassroots basis. Even where, for example, a political party could claim populism, that populism only stop at the level of party organization. But in terms of general spread throughout the country, you will find out that the political party in question is lacking. And then, of course, there is the problem of internal democracy. Political parties today are really lacking in terms of internal electoral practices that would warrant them to come up with, if you like, someone who is elected at the grassroots level democratically, agreed upon by the political party without any let or hindrance, and that this has actually created a serious gap. A serious gap in the sense that a political party today is being hijacked either by the state executive or a political party is being hijacked by the chairman of the party, to the extent that you can hardly make a distinction whether that political party is a trade union or a political party that is actually projecting the national image, projecting the interest and common aspirations of the generality of members. So actually, what one can deduce from what we have today is that political parties are convenient platforms for accession to power, rather than political parties that have grassroots level, political parties that emanate from the demand of the society, political parties that cut across various parts of the country that will provide the much needed interest articulation and interest aggregation. So there is a long way to go here too. In so far, we remain restricted to having a political party that will highly be dominated by elites, nurtured by the elite interest, and projecting the elite interest by extension without recourse to the interest of the generality of the well-being of the Nigerian society. We will end up having this same pattern of party system, which to me, it is more or less a system that will allow for parties that, if at one time you are actually at variance in terms of interest, not ideology, with a political party, you can quickly move to another party. In fact, that is why we experienced every now and then decamping of a politician from one party to another party without recourse to any ideology. So I really concur with the opinion that political parties in Nigeria are lacking in terms of ideology. In fact, they are bereft of ideology, and that for us to really change the narrative, there is the need for party formation to begin at the grassroots level.
We'll take a report by Kelvin Euna, a roll call, June 12th roll call of heroes and matters of democracy. But before that, let's quickly go to Lagos, very quickly. Let's quickly go to Lagos. Alhaji Jamiu, you've listened to this. When we were a lot younger than this, when that election was on in 93, there was no social media, there was nothing like that. But I can bet you most young men and women and even children could sing the election, the songs, the promos, the know what I know that MK is our man and all that. We could all sing those songs and we could identify the party logos. We could do all that. What has changed? That everything seems so blurry and there are no sharp lines in terms of ideology, in terms of recognizing who stands for what.
The problem we have in terms of party ideology and even governance in not just Nigeria, in a lot of third world countries, goes back to what the former American Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, said a couple of years ago. She said, in Africa, we have big individuals and not big institutions. In Africa, even when my father was running for office, when he was running as a flag bearer for the SDP, some party members felt like he had created a parallel party structure for his campaign. In Africa, in most cases, the individual normally dominates, wherever he's the head of. And at the end of the day, it becomes more and more difficult for that individual to have sincere followers because the followers feel like they've been pushed aside or they've been pushed to the wall. My father tried to accommodate people, but his personality was larger than life. So at one point, some people felt that way. So I think we in Africa have to look within, focusing on what the former Secretary of State said about Africa, that we should focus on building big institutions and not big individuals. But it's very difficult to put this into practice sometimes because, there's always a theory and there's always a practical angle. So in this case, what we have is that democracy is something that takes time to evolve. It's like a baby. It crawls, then walks, then one day the baby will run. But we cannot expect everything to happen overnight. So I think as time evolves, people will now come closer because of the issue of ideology. As our economies become more sophisticated, as it becomes more involved in export, as people start realizing more of where their leanings lie. Because at this point, most people, unfortunately, most of the elites are more or less opportunists. So they've gotten privileges based on who they know and not really based on competence. So most of the time, we have people joining parties because of their personal interest. But I'm hoping that since we have a good leadership in form of the President of Nigeria and also the Vice President, and both of them have shown a clear path to a moral compass, we should tag on this and we should take advantage of this. And people who I'm hoping that people who align with the ideas will stick with the party, and those who have other ideas will go to another party, so that we can have a clearer, battle between different ideologies. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight, no matter how much we wish. But to close my point, it's important for us to realize that it's enough. We don't need more big individuals. We need big institutions, and we only can do that is when we instill ideology and make it a factor in life, so that we can actually have clear options on the way to move our country forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, many believe that Nigeria's maturing democracy, the relatively smooth transition from tenure to tenure, that's from May 29, 1999, is likely due to a much bigger sacrifice which began 6 years before. That is June 12, 1993, a day which evokes poignant feelings of a nation in genuine accord on the direction of its political destiny. However, the hands of fate which precipitated an anticlimax to that particular goal has not been able to erase the effects, trauma, and despondency which became the albatross of regime after that date. Today, our democracy, while debating on the new heroes to shaping its present, must thank the past actors for the price paid for today's relative comfort. The push and shove of 1993 and the ensuing years still left a trail of lingering psychological unease until the pronouncement by Nigeria's current president to exorcise the ghosts of that national tragedy. Now, let's take this report from Kelvin Ewunaye, that gives us a roll call of the matters of democracy.
There is no humiliation I have not endured. It has been a long night, but the dawn is here. Today, people of Nigeria, I join you all to say, enough is enough. Those were the words of Chief M.K.O. Abiola, the acclaimed winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election at the famous Ekpetedo Declaration in Lagos in one of his last appearances before his arrest. June 12, 1993 marks a watershed in the political development of Nigeria. Between that period and 1999, when the country returned to democratic rule, was a 6 years period of dogged political struggles championed by politicians, activists, journalists, students, and ordinary Nigerians. The likes of Pa Adekunle Ajasin, Pa Alfred Iwanin, Abraham Adesayan, Dan Suleiman, Gani Faweyimi, Frank Gokori, Wole Soyinka, Kudirat Abiola, and many others used the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, as a vehicle for the June 12 struggles. Some lost their lives, and many others were imprisoned in the quest to instill democratic governance in Nigeria. Those we now refer to as martyrs and heroes of democracy.
June 12 presented that opportunity in the country where politicians came together irrespective of their religion difference, their region difference, and that's how Abiola won that election. So one of the key lessons that I think the present-day politicians will have to learn from those politicians, one, the need to work together irrespective of religion. The need to work together irrespective of where you come from the country. Now, what is most important is the credibility of whoever we're working for. And then two, the common good of this country.
They were not just politicians and activists. They were men of political character, ideology, and conviction. People who remained steadfast in their political beliefs and were prepared to die for it. What makes them different from the current crop of politicians in the country?
It's a moment thing, We had June 12 crisis, and we saw some of them rose up to the occasion and stood their grounds, asking for the actualization of the mandate, even if they did not achieve it. The fact that they did not achieve it is actually immaterial. What matters is the legacy they have left on the sands of time. That legacy is the lesson which I think new crop of politicians will actually learn from. We should be less concerned about material progress. Material acquisition, self-aggrandizement can almost always be immediate, but there's a longer term reward, for sticking to philosophy, for sticking to principles, and for leaving lasting lessons for generations unborn.
It's been 21 years of unbroken democratic rule in Nigeria. Are we as a country anywhere near the realization of the ideas these heroes struggled for?
We have a democracy day now, June 12th. People agitated for it, and they got it. Well, what lessons have we learned from June 12th?
when it was declared a public holiday officially, and we made a law to that end, people celebrated it. But what lessons have we learned? If we are still going to an election with so much uncertainties, and the results come out, and we still leave so many people in doubt. So what that tells me is that as a nation, we haven't learned so much.
The political landscape may have changed considerably, but what remains constant in every political development process is the underlying objective of better life for the citizens, manifesting in improved standard of living, infrastructure, and peaceful country. How we strive to achieve these objectives, observers say, will be the greatest honor done to the matters of democracy in Nigeria. In Abuja, Kelvin Abonwaye, NTA News.
All right, thank you very much, Kelvin, for that one. He, more or less gave us, a list of people of particular, push in terms of resisting and trying to at least make sure that they had a say in the processes, of course, after that annulment. And of course, before then, we'll still be bringing other heroes of democracy. Even before then, we had a lot of people who martyred themselves in the course of democracy. We'll be bringing reports of that in the course of this broadcast. We'll also go out live, of course, to see what our correspondents are doing and feeling the pulse of the people on a day like today. And of course, looking at how we've been able to entrench democratic practices in every area of our existence to make sure that, of course, the dividends of democracy get to the people even in a more accelerated fashion. Now, if some of those men were around today, would they be chaired by activities we're seeing now in terms of dividends of the democracy? You mentioned earlier in terms of governance, especially at the subnational level, states and perhaps even local governments. What would you want to see differently, especially in making sure that the people feel that they have a part in governance?
Well, as I said earlier, democracy is a process. It's not just an event, and it is also a system of government that is complex. What is most important is that we have to, begin to lay, as I said, after 21 years, we should actually be thinking, where is the foundation of this democratic politics that we are talking about? As a political scientist, I'm still yet to be convinced that, the foundation has been laid. If it is possible for, either a party chairman, to railroad everybody and, to do whatever they like, without actually allowing the individuals or even members of the party to have this say. If you have, a structure that does not meet as a political party, I'm happy that, even the court has given, strength to the resolve of INEC, for instance, to, deregister some of the parties that are non-functional. They're just, it's good that they should clear the way. Now, I want to see that, that process is part of the need to actually, develop the foundation that I'm talking about. If we have political parties that are political parties, and they are performing as they should, then we'll begin to see that, we will be having, the sort of, the sort of confusion we have over who is to be a gubernatorial candidate or who is to be, going to the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly and so on. Those things, those confusions, could easily be, avoided, because it will be very clear that, people who have, let me also even mention that we need to have an organic political party. Organic in the sense that they should comprise people who actually share, the same vision as to what they want to use the party for. We are talking earlier about, ideology of parties, which we don't have. It's so, confusing, and that's why we see a scenario where people jump from one party to another. So I think that what we need to be doing now is to actually ensure that members of political parties are actually people who have shared vision of what they want this country to be and how they will go about, making it to be. But if we do not have, and with this, this kind of electoral machine, I call the political parties electoral machine. They are just there for, elections. After elections, they fizzle out, or it becomes the property of either the chairman or somebody who believes that he's the sponsor of the political party. I do not think that if we go the way we are going, we will actually be on the path of consolidating democracy in Nigeria. So what we'll have, in my view, which is actually the way I look at what is going on today, is that we'll just have mere civilian rule, not democratic, rule that we are all aspiring to have. So we have a long way to go, and nobody should believe that we have already, it's an event, because 21 years we have had, as we are, we are trying to put it, we have had, apparently smooth handover from one regime to another, or takeover from one, gubernatorial candidate by another. But what is the essence of what, the sort of a scenario we are witnessing that will now enable people like me to say this is, democratic politics we are playing? That is what I have not seen. And that is what is, we still need to, struggle as much as possible to cultivate the political culture of, accepting that, yes, I belong to this party, I have a role to play, and the role I play does not, it should not be based on, when can I become the governor or the president of the country? Because some people actually go there for the office.
Thank you.
And yeah, so if they don't get it, they begin to, shop for, the party that will give them the opportunity to get to the presidency. And I don't think that's how we're going to be able to build a democratic structure or democratic politics in this country.
All right, you said something. Said people like me talking about intellectuals and university dons and all that. What stops the intellectual community from being a part of it? But before you take that, our correspondent Nnamdi is at the Eagle Square this morning to perhaps see how things are there and perhaps bring us back some memories of Nigeria's democratic struggle. Nnamdi, give us the ambience.
Reflection of what you see right here at the Eagle Square, the very popular Eagle Square. I mean, I would ask the camera to just pan a bit to my left, and it gives you a sense of what is happening here. I mean, this is very unlike the Eagle Square at a day like this. I mean, if not for the COVID-19, if not for the coronavirus pandemic, this would have been a beehive of activities. There would have been an official state event here to commemorate this day, Fisayo. But right now, just as the camera has shown you, the Eagle Square is literally devoid, not literally in the very sense, but it's almost completely devoid of activity, just for a handful of security personnel, officials here on ground. I guess they are part of the committee in charge of the recently inaugurated FCTA committee in charge of sanitation within the Federal Capital Territory, I beg your pardon. So besides these officials here on ground, Eagle Square is literally devoid of activity. Nothing in any sense to commemorate today's events. I mean, the 2020 Democracy Day Fisayo.
Thank you, Nnamdi, for that. Of course, the event is that you are there and giving us some ambience of that place. I almost thought that you were almost campaigning for something, seeing you decked out in that blue suit. But tell us a bit about, take us down memory lane of last year and, give us a sense of the day. All right, well, we're trying to reconnect with Nnamdi, of course, to give us a sense of the celebration. Okay, I understand that Nnamdi can hear me now. Nnamdi, can you recapture for us, the day as you covered last year, and then perhaps bring us back, give us some, memories of that day, and so that we can, 2019, and so that we won't just be looking at these puddles of water and the ambulance there at the back.
Indeed, Fisayo, if you would recall correctly, it was quite euphoric for Nigerians. We were just coming off the announcement from the previous year in 2018, when the president just formally announced June 12th as the new Democracy Day. And so 2019 would be the first time we would officially mark June 12th as the Democracy Day. It was indeed a glamorous event, Fisayo. I dare say, if I do recall correctly, it was quite colorful, and then there were people, representations from different states of the Federation, Fisayo, all came down here to the Eagle Square. It was an elaborate state national event, Fisayo. If I do recall, it was not very long. There was the military parade of guards. There was the presidential address by His Excellency the President Muhammadu Buhari. There were a couple of other events to commemorate the day. But most significant for Sayo was that it was for many, not just for those who were here at the Eagle Square, but for Nigerians across the Federation. It was for them an actualization of a journey that had started at the time for many years, and it was the culmination of what they had hoped and dreamed for a long time. And so for many, they were alive, they were on ground to witness the actualization of June 12th becoming a momentous date in the annals, in the history of our country, Visayo.
Thank you very much, Nnamdi. Perhaps maybe in the course of the program we'll still come back to you for another reaction, maybe in other parts of the city as well. Let's come back to the studio and go to Lagos briefly. Alhaji Jamiu is there, son of late MQ Abiola and Kudirat Abiola. You have been part of a struggle. The struggle continues, of course, for democratic ideals, for democratic practices, for, I think it was Hope 93, that was the slogan then. What would be your comments now when we talk of hope? What do you see in the horizon?
Well, what I see in the horizon is the fact that hope is not something that should just be carried as a slogan. It's something that should come with hard work, because the world we live in is competitive, and it's a world that needs competence for hope to be meaningful. I studied political science in New York University, and I know that democracy is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. The mistake a lot of people made is that when they adopted the concept of democracy, they looked at it as like, this is it, we've arrived. But no, it's just a vehicle. I mean, you are the one that will know how you drive the vehicle to get to the desirable destination. So hope is good as a concept, but it has to be realistic. And I always tell people this. That's why when I wrote my first book, I named it Realistic Hopes, because I think that concept of realistic hopes is something that should apply to everybody, collectively and individually. This country, we have democracy, and the democracy, as my father used as a slogan, was Hope 93. But it's not just say hope, it said hope based on certain programs that should be followed through. And it's not something that the government does by itself. It's something that the government has to do in collaboration with people that are governed. Because if the government says something and people do something else, then it's going to be like a hopeless hope. So my point at this point is that we as Nigerians have to take responsibility. Not taking responsibility has cost a lot. When we talk about June 12, we talk about the sacrifices that came with June 12. It's because of the fact that a lot of people did not want to take responsibility. Why if a woman like my mother that is just 42 years old come and decide to fight a brutal regime on our own? It's because she knew that if she didn't do it, a lot of people were not going to do it. Of course, we have some very wonderful people that stood and they fought along with her. But at the same time, she was more or less fighting a lone battle in most cases. And at the end of the day, she paid the supreme price. But if all of us had collectively joined at that point, it would not have been such a difficult battle, and it would not have been such a tragic one. So we have to learn to understand that hope is good, but it has to come with collective collaboration. Now, we talk about democracy. Some say they are disappointed, but they should ask themselves, what have they done on their own collective level, on their own individual level, to make sure that the democracy actually has a meaning? You cannot say that because I voted for somebody to become president, he can be doing the right things and I'm doing the wrong things, and we'll get a result. The president is not God. You can only wish, you can only hope, you can only try. But without the collaboration, the collective collaboration, the hope now becomes hopelessness. So back to the point, yes, we believe democracy provides hope, but we also believe it's a means to an end, and it's only us as drivers of the vehicle of democracy that will determine how soon we get to the destination. Thank you
very much for that intervention. I wanted to pick you up on some of your comments. Intellectuals, especially the university community, seem to have taken a back step in terms of being part of the process. I remember in the Nigeria's early life in the 60s, in the Second Republic also, you had a lot of university dons being part of the process, not necessarily in terms of vying for elective positions, but creating an intellectual base for ideologies and also participating to a reasonable extent in the process. And also you had student bodies already getting indoctrinated in different thinking ideologies of parties, so that by the time they come out to society graduating, they already have some thoughts to run with. Is it enough for us to perhaps blame the political elite? What about the intellectual community too, taking a back step and being aloof to the process?
Well, I guess what has happened, I made passing reference to it earlier when I said, in the contemporary period, it is not ideology per se, in terms of, this one is a socialist, that one is a capitalist, okay, that actually define the political terrain. What we have is everybody assumes, most people now assume that it is just liberal democracy, and that's why I said earlier that because there is a unipolar world now, everybody just thinks it's just liberal democracy that is there, and it's no more viable. If you are talking in terms of getting radical, dimension of politics in this country, it's not at the moment viable. But more fundamentally, why, it appears as if the intellectuals have taken a backseat, is that the Nigerian politics is so monetized, highly monetized, and that if you have to play politics, even at the local government level, you need a lot of resources. And that's why you see that the color of political participation in this country is normally those who either have made their own wealth from the private sector, or you have individuals who through their public service they were able to make also some create wealth for themselves. They are the ones that you see taking the leading positions in our political practice. So I don't see, in the contemporary, how much is even a professor earning that he will be able to save from it and go and invest it into politics. And except you have limitless resources, as it were, you cannot actually make it. So the little saving you have is probably being saved to ensure make sure that your children go to school, or you live a decent life, in your own little corner. So I don't think this is the period you will get, a heavy dosage of the involvement of intellectuals in the Nigerian politics, because the money is not just there; it is so highly monetized that it's only those who have the money that call the shot.
Prof. Abu Mohammed in Kano, do you agree with Prof? Is it just about the pot, what you have in the or just also being a part of the process, perhaps joining some of these political movements to create an intellectual base, to help shaping policies, to help shaping ideologies? What will be your comment at this time, Prof?
Let me begin by adding that, you see, godfatherism in Nigerian politics has gone deep to the point where, for example, an academician cannot surrender his quote-unquote freedom to be under the subservientship of a godfather. And the monetization of politics in Nigeria has necessitated that someone has to either have the money to join in politics and emerge, quote-unquote, victoriously, or he has to have someone who will actually teleguide his process of participation from the beginning to the end. So godfatherism, as I said, is also one of the major hurdles that actually negate someone from voluntarily joining politics to make any contribution to national development, particularly the academician, or from the academic point of view. Democracy, as has been rightly pointed out, is actually the expression of the right of the people to determine who they will actually rule them. And then if you look at it from that context, you will find out that no academician, worth his name, will surrender his right to politicians that will, at the end of the day, determine their course of political history and development. And then the other aspect of it is that actually there is the need to also promote the culture of democratic development in civil society. One thing that we always overlook when we are mentioning the question of institutional development, we are not just looking at it from the context of party formation, party organization, and party development or electoral process. We have to look at it from the concept of the institution of democracy. And civil society organizations are actually a formidable, the formidable institution that fight for the promotion of the rights of all Nigerians. And we have seen it during the time when June 12 election was annulled and various civic organizations proliferated. The NADECO, the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, the Civil Liberties Organization, Constitutional Rights Project, and what have you. They were all very much aggressive in terms of pursuing their cause. But today, the gap is that civil society organizations are into various specialized activities. And most of these specialized activities have little, not much to do with democratic processes. But if we can be able to actually bring out most of the civil society's organizations from their slumber, and I think the Nigerian state will benefit from the wider participation of collective individuals in transforming the political processes of this country. And by and large, as far as democracy is concerned, in Nigeria, one can say that the glass is half empty rather than half full. This is because there are so many institutional mechanisms that one could see on ground to now say that democratic practices are imbibed. But if you look at it critically, you will find out that most of these institutions are actually not performing the best of their functions, leading to, or rather cascading to, what we are having today. If you talk about democracy without quality of life, poverty is actually penetrating into the nooks and corners of this country. And of course, government is doing its best to ensure that it comes into the rescue of some sections of the society, but there is the need to actually ensure that the greater part of this country, the population in this country, actually benefit from what is normally called dividend of democracy. And there is no way you can actually persuade civic institutions, to persuade civic organizations to participate in the political process without ensuring that the quality of life is improved, and then the security, which is quite paramount. Ever since 1999, we have been talking about the security of lives and property, and that we have been talking about peaceful coexistence among the different ethnic nationalities of this country. All these have not been fully achieved, and there is the need to actually ensure that the stakeholders, civil society, the state, and other paramount institutions in the struggles for the entrenchment of democracy come together, and work in tandem so that they can be able to ensure that democracy is making the needful intervention in terms of emancipating the emancipating people from the excruciating poverty that they have been experiencing. So I think there is the need to look at some of these critical issues once we are actually rejuvenating the June 12th election and the June 12th as Democracy Day. And the reason being that Abiola was, if I can say, more or less from the comprado bourgeoisie of the Nigerian society, but he was actually pro-people, pro-poor, pro-masses. And we saw that in his intention, we saw that in his practical philanthropist intervention in different parts of the country, regardless of region, religion, ethnic background, or any other idiosyncrasy. And that if we can have someone who will actually come up with a kind of grand understanding of democracy vis-a-vis empowerment in terms of quality of lives of the people, I think people will now surrender their support to such a person, so that we will now have a populist person that will actually translate the will, aspirations, and desires of the people in reality. But going back to your question, actually, there is a long way to go for academicians to join the murky waters of Nigerian politics today, because it is a murky waters that actually involves a lot of ups and downs, which one of the factors have been clearly stated, is that we don't have this kind of money that one can actually garner in order to venture into politics and become successful in that. And at the same time, no one can just surrender his will to a kind of money bags, or to people that one can call godfathers to actually tailor the political life of an academician.
Much, Prof, for that summation. I almost thought I was in the lecture theater there. But moving on now very quickly, June 12th, the date, the struggle which crystallized Nigeria's storied democratic journey. In this report, Mayor Ogidi attempts to capture a story of a missed opportunity and then redemption.
Politics, a game where no one celebrates until it's over. A game where even 1 second counts. And sometimes that 1 second can come with the unexpected. Late MKO Abiola shares this sentiment because he felt it. He saw the promised land but could not enter. And this is the presidential seat MKO Abiola never sat. Superbly inviting.
It's true that the presidential election was generally seen to be free, fair, and peaceful. However, there was in fact a huge array of electoral practices virtually in all the states of the Federation.
This was the final nail in the coffin of the June 12 polls. A stillbirth after 10 years of much-awaited delivery of democracy. Another gloomy future for representative governance, opening the cloud for another sunrise to military rule. The mood of the nation was that of protest and grief. The victor becomes a victim. A just struggle to the presidential villa only saw MKO Abiola off to detention center in 1994. It was a journey of no return. He died on the 7th of July 1998, the day he is supposed to leave detention. Many scars left behind in the democratic map of the country. As the fourth civilian president in the Fourth Republic was armed with the fortitude to retrieve a paper that fell 25 years ago. As a cycle of healing and redemption begins, so does the phoenix, which is Nigeria's democracy, rise steadily from the ashes and despondency of 1993. A national apology to MKO Abiola and his team, denied the podium his time, but now afforded the posthumous lab of honor for a lifetime.
Today, I'm very happy to be present and to preside over the commemoration and investiture marking the formal official federal government recognition of June 12 as National Democracy Day. Accordingly, on behalf of the federal government, I tender the nation's apology to the family of late MKO Abiola.
Beaming with smiles and deep sense of nostalgia, palpable on the faces of Baba Gana Kingibe and the wife of late Gani Fahimi on the podium. But behind the scene, such nostalgic feeling roaming in the heart of Chidia Madueke, whose political journey was also cut short by the June 12 annulment.
I was a victim because I was already in the Federal House of Representatives. I was the chairman, House Committee on Defense. It's unfortunate that this injury could have been healed long before now. But we had strong presidents that were not courageous. So we are blessed to have President Muhammad Buhari, who is not only a strong president, but a very courageous one, who chose at the right time to say that we must begin the process of healing. And it's very auspicious to remember that during the first Democracy Day celebration, in the speech of President Muhammad Buhari, he said that he's going to lift, under his watch, will commence the process of lifting 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. Why I say so is because the campaign team for MKO was farewell to poverty. So you can see some kind of handshake here.
The lead actor of the June 12 saga, MKO Abiola, is gone. But not his name, not his honor, and now not his victory, but a victory for democracy. Mie Ogidi, NT News.
Thank you very much, Mie, for that report. We came back from Kano before this report, and Prof was talking about just towing your line in terms of financing, God federalism, and all that, and they're called politics murky waters. But we have to put in some courage or else we keep on standing on the sideline and not particularly affecting the present and the future, as it were. Looking forward in terms of looking at your own wealth of experience and having participated also in that process that culminated in that.
No, I've just facilitated it, not participated.
Yes, okay. I've been a facilitator. There's still some form of participation. What will be your thoughts going forward? How do we begin to, tentatively enter into the, I won't say we, intellectuals like yourself, begin to be a part of it, to steer the ship in the direction of intellectualism and perhaps, influencing decisions at the top level in different parties, which will also perhaps influence who emerges?
I think there is a problem with that. The intellectuals in any society have specific role to play. Not necessarily. I mean, there are a few of them who will be politically attuned, and they want to play politics. That's that. But it is not something that they will have to combine with, intellectual preoccupation or occupation. And therefore, I think that we have to actually create a line of demarcation. Those who want to play politics, it's not that we don't have people. This country of over 200 million Nigerians or people, we really have quality materials that can play politics and play it very well. This is my belief. And it doesn't have to be everybody. Otherwise, we enter into what Samuel Huntington declared as a Praetorian society, in which case clerics, imams, soldiers, trade unionists, everybody become, they are struggling to capture this power, political power. We don't have to, get to that point. In fact, under, we actually, we have come out of Praetorianism. In other words, having the military, people who are not actually supposed to be playing politics, taking over the political, coming to the helm of affairs of the country. That is what, we have to avoid. Everybody will have their, profession. For goodness sake, make your profession much better, or let it, attain world standard as is practiced everywhere. If you are, a security personnel, for goodness sake, make sure that, when the country is at the mercy of, at the mercy of attack, get up, organize the men and women in the forces, and try to defend the territorial integrity of the country. That's your role. If you are a teacher, go to the classroom and make sure that you teach effectively, so that knowledge can be passed from one generation to another. And if you are a journalist, of course, you also know that you have your, the borders of your profession. Normally we talk about, responsible journalism, or journalism that is based on factual reporting or reportage. Let's also have the professionals in that profession, making sure that they play the aspect they are supposed to play for the development of the country. So for academicians, they can play a role providing ideas, and these ideas they can play is, if there is a political party that has a particular project, or it's a question of how to organize a party, structure it in such a manner as to be effective as an effective competitor in the political arena. Then you ask, maybe for a professor of political science or a political scientist, come and advise us, and he can go and play that role. Maybe he's paid some stipend, and he comes back to go to the classroom and continue with the professional duty he has to carry out. If you do not allow such distinctive professions to practice, or professionals rather, to practice what they are trained to, then we enter into a situation where everybody, I want to be a politician, and the next thing that I will have to do as a teacher now is to go and look for money. And where do I get it from? It's either I begin to vent what is unbecoming of a teacher, or go and create consultancy outfit, which actually is not even doing anything in order to get the money. So I believe that intellectuals in society, they have a role in making sure that they guide the next generation, developing them ideas that will also help them to the younger generations to come to society and better it, make it better than they have met it. Otherwise, we will really create confusion, and that confusion is what we went through, unfortunately, during the military. And you could see, even from, the report we've just taken, an election that even the president, Babangida himself agreed was considered to be properly, conducted. They were still looking for loopholes, and those loopholes are never there. And I'm happy, and as the reporter has also said, that we have gotten a president who even came. In fact, it was not just that he ensured that June 12th is recognized, but he tendered apologies on behalf of the Nigerian government to the family of and Nigerians are attached, because we had a situation where the military were more political than security forces that they are supposed to be.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to, in other words, you're saying, talking about your, earlier intervention, sanitize your little space, your little sector, so we get collective serenity.
Exactly.
Let's move quickly to Kano before I let Professor Habu Mohammed go. Your final thoughts on Nigeria's democracy. It seems as if what we are having these days, we have pre-election activities, campaigns, the election proper, litigation before governance. What is your thoughts? What are your thoughts before we let you go?
Well, I think that is why I mentioned earlier that in order to avoid some obvious challenges in our democratic practices, there is the need to actually look at the issue of institutional capacity development of most of our institutions of democracy. For example, we are talking about INEC as a kind of electoral umpire. There is the need to ensure that INEC is actually given such a role that it can only conduct elections, but taking INEC into the judicial issues, electoral contestations after the elections is the role that can be taken seriously by an independent court. And that is why every now and then, from the civil society context, people are actually saying that let there be a kind of a court of law specifically meant for addressing the issues of forced election litigations. And if we can do that, we are giving INEC the breathing space to concentrate on the organization of election, as well as ensuring that the process of election from the beginning to the end is free, fair, and credible, so that all other sundry issues that will come thereafter will now be taken care of by the litigation institution specifically created to handle such cases. So I think if we want our democracy to be well entrenched, one, we need to actually develop the capacity of the political parties. Second, there is the need to actually reinvigorate the culture of opposition within the midst of political parties that we have, because opposition is only when there is going to be election or when immediately elections are concluded. Let there be an opposition that is issue-based, political parties that can oppose the policies of government on the basis of what the government does, whether it is right or wrong. You need to look at it critically and now come up with possible suggestions and enlighten the people. In fact, that is what we call policy intervention by political parties that will create the semblance of political articulation and aggregation of the collective interest of the majority of the people, particularly people that are not actually outspoken, people that only political parties can speak for them, and when they speak, they can as well actually take their messages along to the policy cycle. And thirdly, there is the need to also ensure that our electoral practices are actually free from malpractices, free from electoral rigging, free from logistic challenges, so that we will have the process that will engender at the end of the day what we call a legitimate government.
Well, Professor, thank you very much, Professor Habu Mohammed, Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. One, thank you for being a part of the program today. He's former Deputy Director, Aminu Kano Center for Democracy Research and Training, Mambaya House, and former Head of Department, Political Science Department with specialty in political economy. Thank you very much, Professor, for being a part of today's program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's quickly go to Lagos. Alhaji Jamiu Abiola. Your dad was perhaps people would say one of a kind, extremely wealthy in his time and in touch with the masses and the downtrodden. Not many people combine these. How do we, in terms of the political parties, do some house cleaning to give, to produce people with such character?
That is actually very, very important, because it's the character of the people that would determine the value of the fruits of democracy, or what you call the results. I think it's very important for people to look at competence whenever they are looking for people. The problem we have in this country, and like a lot of other third world countries, is because there's always this level of opportunism. People do things, as you mentioned, godfatherism and all of that. This is a country in which you could have so many talents, but for one reason or the other, you might not be able to use them for one reason or the other, And at the end of the day, when the results are not met, people start wondering that why is it that things are not moving forward? We have a lot of competent people, not just in Nigeria, in other third world countries, that are capable of doing so much, but just simply because they don't know the right people, or the right people are not fighting hard enough for them, they don't get results. And that is why, if you look at the world today, most third world countries are always lagging behind. And the irony of it all is that the countries that actually are doing well, they actually pick competent people. You see the people that run and take part in governance are people that have some very, very extraordinary qualifications. And these are countries that are already far ahead. So I think it's important for people in the political party level and in generally to always look for the different and the most unique people, especially for people like us here in Africa, because we have so many challenges. When we talk about governments in the past that have destroyed, so much, plundered, looted, we're already at the backstage. Then we now have a problem like COVID-19 that is even threatening the world, to the point that the greatest economy in the world can lose 40 million jobs in just 1 month. It goes on to prove that we need to put all the best minds we have on deck. So it's important for us to just look at competence. And I'm glad that we've seen some of these people taking part in government, but I think more should be done in terms of selecting people that are able to do more. And that's what my father felt he needed to do. That's why he stood out. He never really cared about whether you are rich, whether you are poor. He was more into what can you do for the country? And it's unfortunate he was not given a chance to rule. But I'm glad, as I said earlier on in the program, that we have people like the current president and the vice president who have moral compass, and we can use that foundation to try to engineer a system in which only the competent people serve, especially at times where democracy, as the president said in his maiden address today, is at risk because of COVID-19 and, of course, because of other relating issues. Thank you very much.
Alhaji Jamiu Abiola right there in Lagos Network Center. One, thank you for coming this morning. And we know the day holds some poignant feelings for you. So thoughts with you and your family at this time of healing. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
All right, now there will be an official inauguration of the Moshood Abiola National Stadium here in Abuja today. And we'll be joining our correspondent there at the National Stadium, Ayodeji Makinde, to give us an ambience and perhaps an idea of what exactly we expect to see in a few short moments.